In the early days of the Second World War, Britain was desperate to take the fight to Germany. The year was 1940, a time of uncertainty and pressure, as the nation had just experienced the harrowing evacuation from Dunkirk and was bracing for the imminent Battle of Britain. Amid this turmoil, Britain was not content to sit back and play. The formation of the Special Operations Executive, or the SOE, and the Commandos marked a shift in strategy, a bold move to bring the battle to the enemy's doorsteps. These new units were trained for unorthodox warfare, for disruptive and daring operations behind enemy lines. On the 30th of June 1940, the Germans landed troops on the Channel Islands. 2 days later, the British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, dispatched a memo to his Chief Staff Officer, General Hastings Ismay, urging him to begin planning an operation for a raid on the islands as soon as possible, and positing that he felt that it would be the type of operations that the newly formed Commandos would be fit for. It was a bold move, fraught with risk and uncertainty, but crucial in the grand scheme of things. Codenamed Ambassador, it was decided that the operation would follow 2 preliminary operations codenamed Anger. The preliminary operations would be undertaken to gather necessary intelligence prior to a raid by 140 men, which would land on the island of Guernsey, and attack the airfield with the purpose of destroying aircraft and buildings, as well as capturing or killing members of the garrison. The units that were chosen for the raid were H Troop from No. 3 Commando and No. 11 Independent Company. No. 3 Commando, under Lieutenant Colonel John Durnford Slater, had only just been raised, having completed its recruitment on 5th July, and had not yet begun training, whilst No. 11 Independent Company under the command of Major Ronnie Todd had been raised earlier in June, and had a few weeks earlier undertaken Operation Collar, which had been a hastily organised and largely unsuccessful raid on Pas-de-Calais department of France. During the planning stage, Durnford Slater went to London, where he worked out most of the details with David Niven, who was then serving as a staff officer in the Combined Operations Headquarters. With the stage set, the daring and risky Operation Ambassador was ready to kick off. On the night of 7/8 July, a reconnaissance operation was carried out, when Lieutenant Hubert Nicol, an officer in the Hampshire Regiment who was originally from Guernsey and first commissioned in the Royal Guernsey Militia, was landed on the island by the submarine HMS H-43. 3 days later, he was picked up, and based on the information that he provided, it was determined that the garrison on Guernsey consisted of 469 soldiers, concentrated mainly around St. Peter Port, and although there were machine gun posts all along the coast, they were sited in a manner that meant that it would take about 20 minutes between an alarm being raised for reinforcements to be dispatched. The original plan had been for the raid to be carried out on the night of 12/13 July, but at the last moment, it was put back to 14/15 July. Even then, shortly before embarkation, Durnford Slater received intelligence that the Germans had reinforced a number of the places where it had been planned to land some of the parties, so the plan was perforce changed at the last moment. After the details had been fixed, final preparations were undertaken in the gymnasium at the Royal Naval College, Dartmouth, where some of the cadets helped the Commandos with loading magazines and helping prepare the Bren light machine guns and Thompson submachine guns that had been brought down from London specifically for the operation. At 17:45, the raiding force embarked in the destroyers Scimitar and Saladin, and accompanied by 6 Royal Air Force air-sea rescue launches that were to transfer the men from the destroyers to the landing beaches, departed for Guernsey. As a consequence of the loud noise of the RAF launch's engines, it was arranged that Avro Anson General Reconnaissance aircraft would overfly the island to disguise the sound of the engines. As the Commandos sailed through the choppy seas, they faced a barrage of challenges. The poor weather conditions made for a treacherous journey. The waves were high, the wind howled, and the rain was relentless. These conditions not only tested the physical endurance of the men but also played havoc with their navigation. Despite the best-laid plans, the forces of nature were a formidable adversary. In this confusion, No. 3 Commando, under the command of John Durnford Slater, managed to land on Guernsey. But the storm had scattered their landing crafts. Soldiers found themselves isolated, unsure of their location, and without any sign of the enemy. The confusion was palpable. Orders got lost in the wind, and the carefully planned operation seemed to be unraveling. Meanwhile, No. 11 Independent Company had their own share of troubles. One party of No. 11 were taken to the wrong island, Sark, as a result of another faulty compass. Landing on Little Sark, the team explored La Sablonnerie, and not finding any Germans returned safely to the destroyer. Another party crashed into a rock and the other two launches broke down after experiencing a series of technical problems. Back on Guernsey, No. 3 Commando was also grappling with the decision to withdraw. The enemy was nowhere to be found, and the raid seemed to have lost its purpose. With heavy hearts, they retreated, boarding their landing crafts and setting course back to England. Despite the best intentions and bravery of the Commandos, Operation Ambassador had ended without engaging the enemy. The storm had won the night, turning a daring raid into a lesson in humility for the British forces. But as we'll see in the aftermath, it was a lesson that would not be wasted. In the cold light of day, the Commandos and the British High Command had to face the hard truths of Operation Ambassador. The operation, ambitious as it was, had fallen short of its objectives, leading to an in-depth investigation into what went wrong. It quickly became apparent that the mission was plagued by a series of mishaps and missteps. Poor planning was a major culprit. The operation had been put together hastily, without sufficient time to iron out the details and contingencies. In addition to this, a lack of concrete intelligence was a significant setback. The Commandos had gone into the operation somewhat blind, without a clear understanding of the enemy's strength or the layout of the land. This, coupled with navigational errors during the operation, made a difficult task even more challenging. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. As the saying goes, failure is the best teacher, and the British High Command took these lessons to heart. The significance of good intelligence was underscored, leading to a more concerted effort to gather and analyze information before launching future operations. Careful planning was also highlighted as a crucial element of successful military operations. There was a newfound appreciation for the importance of meticulous preparation, taking into account various scenarios and potential challenges. The lessons learned from Operation Ambassador had far-reaching implications. They shaped future commando operations, leading to improved strategies and more successful missions. In addition, the findings from the investigation fed into the work of the Special Operations Executive, SOE. This organization, tasked with conducting espionage, sabotage and reconnaissance in occupied Europe, benefited immensely from the insights gained from Operation Ambassador. Indeed, it is often through our failures that we learn the most. It's through these setbacks that we're forced to take a hard look at our methods, reassess our strategies, and ultimately come back stronger. While a failure in its immediate goals, Operation Ambassador played a crucial role in the development of Britain's special forces, lessons that would prove vital in the years to come.